So good morning, everyone. Before the organizers put the first slide on, I welcome all of you to the world of drama therapy. I will be sharing my investigation into practice with one of my clients. It was a part of my placement, that is a compulsory component of my course. I'm studying drama therapy at the University of Roehampton, as you already know. So can we have the first slide, the title slide? Yeah, thank you. So the story of I don't know. You might be thinking what this story is about, whether I don't know is a character or it is just a phrase, what it is. So it is literally a story of I don't know. And it is also the story of my work that took place in a special education needs school in the UK. That was the part of my placement, as I earlier said. So there I worked with 3 children, and I will be sharing my work with one of them. He was a 14-year-old boy, and he had mild learning difficulties. He had some difficulty in understanding the concepts, and he needed some repetition to understand those or memorize things. And he was referred for therapy because he had difficulty in managing his emotions, and he had some aggressive behavior, and he was very much aware of that. So before I begin to share the story, let me familiarize you with some of the core concepts and the literature that I reviewed before writing my dissertation about my practice with this client. That will give you an overview of the work and the theories that support this work. Can we go to the first slide? So when I reviewed the literature, I read some philosophical ideas around not knowing, because my client was with I don't know. So Peter Wilson, a psychotherapist who wrote an essay with the same title, I don't know, he says, the sound of I don't know has a ring of finality, an end of sentence, yet two of possibility, a sentence poised for the next. It is in the I don't know that the knowing proceeds. And other philosophers, artists who reflected or shared their thoughts on not knowing. So Rachel Jones says, not knowing contains within it the possibility of the not yet and still to be. Once you know, you don't know, you can begin to explore. So this is where I was. My client was presenting with I don't know. When I would ask how he's feeling, he would say, I don't know. But was that a full stop? That if he doesn't know anything, how would I proceed? What would I do with him? That I will share when I will talk about my practice. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So Peter Wilson, when he wrote his essay, he was writing about his practice with adolescents, and just not knowing and saying I don't know is very common in adolescents. And why is that? So he says they are in the midst of internal migration, leaving behind their childhood bodies, passing over, reaching, changing, making their own way. Their passage into uncharted territory is fraught with unknowables. So this phase of transition where they have like there was pre-knowledge, they are discovering something new, but they are not sure yet. So there is this confusion, there is some shame about body, what they are discovering about their bodies. So there are a lot of things that are going on in their mind and they are not yet sure what it is. So it is very common for adolescents to say, I don't know. And how do we explore that in drama therapy and uh, what it means in the therapy space and what do we do about it and what drama therapy has to offer, that I'll talk about in the next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So here we talk about mental health and connection. And mental health, when we work on mental health in a therapeutic way, and that's where the all concepts of therapy come in. And the connection has a very significant role to play in mental health. Vander Kolk, in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, he says being able to feel safe with other people is probably the single most important aspect of mental health. Safe connections are fundamental to meaningful and satisfying lives. When I will share my work with my client, you will see the reference of these ideas that he was feeling difficulty in making connections. Though the therapist is supporting the client on his journey, but at times, therapists' self-disclosure helps the client feel more connected. Culture also plays an important role in making connection. And you will also hear about culture, my culture and my client's culture, and how it helped in making connection in the therapeutic space and how it enriched our therapeutic relationship, which is very, very important for therapy to take place. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So body and therapy. When we talk about drama therapy, body is very important because we work with the body and we use a lot of movements. And there are tools that I will talk about. But here are some core concepts of why we work with the body and how therapeutic it is and how it contributes to therapy. So Vander Kolk says, for our physiology to calm down, heal, and grow, we need a visceral feeling of safety. And that safety is very important that we talked in the last slide, like connection. If we feel safe with other people, then that is the single most important aspect of mental health. That's what Vander Kolk said. And here, to feel safe at the visceral level in your guts. Visceral feeling means knowing in your guts, in the center of the body. So it has a lot to do with your body. that feeling of safety. When you are feeling safe in yourself, then you can feel safe outside with other people. So issues are encountered and realized through physical embodiment. They are made and encountered through the body. In drama therapy, this physicalized knowing, remember we are talking about not knowing, we started with not knowing, and here we are proceeding towards knowing. And in drama therapy, Phil Jones is talking about physicalized knowing. It is not knowing just by your brain or cognitive knowing, it is knowing through your body and by your body and in your body. So in drama therapy, this physicalized knowing and being within a dramatic representation of a problem or issue makes a crucial difference. Drama therapy involves body in multiple ways, including movement, rhythm, and play. Play is very important. You will hear about play when I'll share the story of I Don't Know. I have experienced the complete change in mood and energy while playing with my peers in the class. That's my own experience. Can we go to the next slide, please? Projections. This is a very important concept in therapy. So what are projections? Projecting some of one's own attributes onto another, towards whom one subsequently feels an uncanny attraction or repulsion. That's what Yalom says. So when we have some difficult feelings, when we are feeling difficulty in managing some feelings, we project them onto other people. Like if you are feeling angry, you might project your anger onto someone else, or your sadness. The projection appears as a defense mechanism in psychotherapy, but in drama therapy, projection becomes expressive rather than being primarily defensive. So when we project our feelings onto others, we are using a defense to manage our own emotions, our own feelings, to get rid of them. But in drama therapy, we use projections for therapeutic purpose, and I'll share how that happens. In drama therapy, dramatic projection connects personal material with the therapeutic process and space. So in drama therapy, we do body movements, we work with the stories, and we embody characters, we work with the objects on which the client can project his or her feelings. And those characters will present their personal material. Like they will project their own feelings on those on those objects and characters, though they are not themselves, but still those objects or characters in the story or in the enactment will present their own feelings. And that's how it becomes manageable, because there is a distance between themselves and the character or the objects. They are not themselves. This is the difference between psychodrama and drama therapy. Can we go to the next slide, please? Defenses, as we discussed, but here I am talking about defenses in more detail because this is very relevant to my client. So identification with the aggressor is a common defense mechanism that is unconsciously employed in order to disarm potential enemies, as well as the analyst. Thus, one attempts to forestall an unfavorable judgment from the outside by doing it to oneself first within. So with my client, he would say that he has aggressive behavior, but the other people are telling him that he's aggressive. So he would say that by himself. So that is how this identification with the aggressor happens, and we keep doing that. And we feel shame about it, or we feel guilt about it. And that was happening with my client. So this is very, very relevant. And you will come to know when I share the story. Grimshaw suggests that the client might have developed defenses because of past experiences and stopped trusting people. And that's why my client was feeling difficulty in making connections. This lack of trust arising from the fear of getting hurt and abandonment stops a person from loving. So when someone can't trust, how that person can love? In such situation, the therapist's role is to help the client to learn to love. It is similar to the role of adult for the child that Khalil Gibran says, like, that is to teach the child to love. That is the role of the adult. And it is relevant in therapy as well. He says a child can only love when he feels loved. Can we go to the next slide? Yes. So love and empathy has a lot in common. And empathy is very important in therapy, how you make someone feel loved. So empathy encourages emotional resonance, identification, and high emotional involvement with any dramatic work. According to Phil Jones, the empathic response in dramatic work has the potential to help the client to develop empathy towards others in life. That's what I was talking in the last slide. So when one gets this empathy and love, that person can develop empathy and love for other people. That empathic response comes from the therapist in one-on-one therapy that I'm going to share with you. I worked with a client in one-on-one drama therapy, and I worked with that client for 6 months. And let's go to the next slide, and then we will begin the story. So following the client. So in drama therapy, the therapist takes many roles. It's not just leading the therapeutic process. The therapist can follow the client, and it's very much client-led because it's all about the client and his own feelings. So the therapist only facilitates the process, and the client brings in his or her material in the space. So in taking on the role of follower, she needs to accept the ability of confused, unhappy, unwanted, ill, and disabled individuals to express needs symbolically. So when one follows, one might feel that he or she doesn't have any agency because you're following someone. But that is very important because that's how the client might be feeling. And when client leads the process, at times the therapist has to follow that because that is the client's need in that moment. No therapist can possibly be familiar with every effective treatment, and he or she must be open to learn from the client. That's what Van der Kolk says. I am learning to be a drama therapist. My course has almost finished, but I'm still learning. And I learned drama therapy, and that too, just one approach. I'm aware about other approaches, but I have learned just one approach. And I'm reading many books, but I'm not aware of everything. So that is important. The therapist needs to be aware of that. And that is why the therapist needs to be open for to adapt anything in the session to support the client. All right, so let's begin the story. So I started working with this client, and what we do in the first session, we work on the contract. So that contract is to work together, and that's where the client would share what he or she is expecting from therapy, and what he or she wants or does not want, and what are the boundaries. That is very important. What are the boundaries? There is a boundary of the space, there's confidentiality, and there are time boundaries. It is not like if one comes in the therapy session and that client would stay like for any period of time. It's not like that. And that has an important role to play in therapy, because the client needs to be aware that it is for a limited time, so that the client, one, does not feel overwhelmed, that he or she is feeling something a lot and there's no end to it. But the client is aware that there is an end to it. The therapy lasts for 50 minutes, and that's how it is. And the time boundaries also work in another way, that the client has only 50 minutes, and if the client has to share or express or work on his or her feelings, then he or she has to do that in the 50 minutes time. So that's how the time boundaries work. And there is confidentiality. This space, the therapy space, is confidential. And that's how it makes it safe for the client. Because you might not share your inner feelings with someone if that person is going to share those with other people. So because of the confidentiality, the client feels safe to share his or her inner feelings with the therapist. So it is a confidential space. So we worked on the contract, and the very first thing that he wrote in the contract, that he needs a 2 minutes break to calm down. That showed that he was very much aware of his aggression. He knew that he might feel aggressive. He was very much aware of his difficult feelings. And that is why he said that he needs to calm down. And it was also the identification with the aggressor. People might have said that you need to calm down. And that was a very important piece of information that I got from that contract. We worked on a story that day that we do for the assessment, and that is a 6-piece story. So I invited him to draw a story in 6 boxes, and that's how we assess the client. And I came to know that the client was feeling lonely. He was unable to make connections with people, but also he felt good in other people's company. So the story showed his coping mechanism, that he had the social need. And on the next day, when I asked, how is he feeling? So he said, I don't know. And that's where the story begins. So what do we do then if the client says, I don't know? And that's where the role of drama therapy comes in. I invited him to do some stretching, and we played a game with the stretching and movements. So that was like 1, 2, 3. I call 1, he calls number 2, I call number 3, and that's how it goes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, and 3 are replaced with movements. And then I invited him to name those movements or give a sound to those movements. So the first movement that he did was like this. And when I asked him to name it, he said, I don't know. And the other one was calm, and the third one was stretch. So then I invited him to create a story with these 3 characters: I don't know, calm, and stretch. So he created a story that begins with I don't know. And I don't know, sitting in the park, there are children playing, but he is sitting alone. He's feeling lonely. Then there is stretch, who is working out in the gym, stretching. And then there is calm, and the stretch and calm go along very well. They go out to dine in the restaurant, and then they go home. But I don't know remains alone and feeling lonely. In the next session, I invited him to embody those characters. I invited him to enact the story, and I asked him which character he would like to take and which character he would like to give to me. So he took the character of I don't know, and he gave me the character of calm. And this is very contradictory in itself. Like, the character is calm, but he projected that character onto me. He made me calm, but the calm is opposite to his name. He is the aggressor. He is a bully. So in the story, I don't know is sitting in the park, and calm approaches I don't know, and he says, what are you doing here, you dumb and stupid boy? These were the dialogues that were given by the client. They were not like created by me that I have to say this. I asked the client what calm is going to say to I don't know. So we were in the enactment And I don't know was sitting alone, and Calm approaches him and says, "What are you doing here, you dumb and stupid boy?" And I don't know feels uh, frustrated, hurt, angered, and he leaves the place. And then he says, "Let's go to the next scene." So then I stepped out of the character and asked him to replay this scene. And when we replayed it, he was feeling even more angry, and I sensed it that anger was present there. And I stepped out of the character and asked him, how is he feeling? And where he is feeling in the body. So he did this gesture on the table, but very lightly. And I asked him whether he wants to do it like more. So he did it more. And then I gave him a cushion, and he was feeling so angry, he punched the cushion like this. And that's how he could express and release his anger. But just after that, he became aware of his aggression that he is already aware of, and he wants to hide it. It is very difficult for him to manage. So he stepped out of the character and he said he doesn't want to play the character anymore. And he sat on the chair. So we came back to the talking space. We came out of the enactment. That is a different space. But he was still with overwhelming feelings. So I invited him to write a monologue. What I don't know would like to say in that monologue. And he wrote that I don't know feels very angry and he wants to punch the police. And that's how he was feeling. But then he became very uncomfortable and he looked at the time, he wanted to leave, and he said like he does not want to continue therapy. And then I talked to him briefly, like, why is that? And I make him agree to come back to the next session, and let's see how it proceeds. And he agreed to come back in the next session, but straight away he sat down on the chair and asked whether we could play some board game. So I said yes, and we started playing. We started playing some board game, like noughts and crosses. So we played for some time, and then he said, "Can we do some stretching?" So we did some stretching, and when I asked him whether he would like to revisit the story, he said no. He would like to continue playing. So we played, and that's how the session went on. You remember I talked about the role of the follower. So here I completely surrendered in front of my client in order to facilitate his therapeutic process. I did not have to ask him, no, you have to work on the story. He's feeling overwhelmed with that story, but he could find space to express his anger, which was sitting there in the body, and he could express it. But since he was aware of it, he does not want to revisit. He just wants to play. He was avoiding. So play was a defense as well. That was a defense against his own difficult feelings. He was using play as a defense mechanism in order to avoid those difficult feelings. But that play contributed in our therapeutic relationship. He felt safe that, okay, this man is not forcing me to feel those difficult feelings. I can play with him. And we played in that session, and he felt happy after that session. And we continued playing in next sessions. In one of the sessions, he asked whether you can make airplanes, paper airplanes. And I said, yes. And we made paper airplanes, and we flew those airplanes in the therapy space. So, and that changed a lot of things. That changed the dynamics between us. He was feeling uncomfortable, and he wanted to avoid therapy after the second session, but now he is feeling comfortable with me and my company. And you remember that in the story, he was feeling difficulty in connecting with other people because he was afraid of being bullied. So here he started making connection with me. And then he started sharing, he started asking, actually, do you know about Bangladesh? That was his country. And I said, yes. Fortunately, I belong to India. He belonged to Bangladesh, and we share the same culture, the same history before partition. So there was a lot in common. We talked about Bollywood, and he used to watch Bollywood films, though he was born and brought up in London. He does not know Bengali. His mother speaks Bengali. And
Hey दोस्तों, मैं हूं तौसीफ और आप देख
though
रहे हैं
I
BB
know
Fun।
Bengali, I learned Bengali, that's not my mother tongue. So I offered him if we could talk in Bengali if he would like to. But he doesn't know that much. But it was that sharing of culture that also contributed in. Is there any problem with the video? Somebody's writing in the chat, can we ask him to check his video? Okay, thank you. All right, so yeah. So you remember we talked about culture, the role of culture in making connections. So that was very visible here. And we proceed further. In one session, I invited him. I asked him actually in the check-in, how is he feeling and how I don't know his feeling. So he shared that I don't know has found friends. And I was surprised to hear that, and how I was curious, how did that happen? So I invited him to work with the objects and show me how I don't know has found friends. So he started working with the objects, and in that also I don't know was sitting alone, and then people started approaching him and they became friends. So then I asked him, what if I don't know approaches people? What would happen? So he said, yes, that's possible. And then I don't know approaches people and ask them whether they can become friends. So people agree to become friends, but they put a condition. Everybody puts a condition on him to become friends. This is very important. You remember we talked about identification with the aggressor. So these people with whom he was feeling difficult to make connection with, He was seeing them as aggressor, he was seeing them as bullies, and he was afraid that he might be bullied by them and being called stupid and dumb. So he has internalized those comments that he might have heard, and those people started putting conditions that in order to become friends, you should stop being aggressive, you should be calm, you should appreciate nature, don't be emotional. And that was very important information that I received from my client, that he was going through a lot and he was feeling those feelings that were difficult for him and making him difficult to make connections with other people, that he cannot be emotional, he cannot be aggressive. And we all have feelings. How can we get rid of those feelings and then surrender completely and act in the way the other people want? And what would happen then? If we keep repressing, suppressing our feelings, they will turn inwards. And if they turn inwards, they will come out in some other ways, like aggression or depression or sadness. And that will even make it more difficult to connect with other people. So that was a kind of loop that I discovered. And then after that session, in other session, I invited him to enact I Don't Know again. And those conditions were put that you have to feel calm, don't be aggressive, don't be emotional. And I asked I Don't Know enroll, how does he feel about those feelings and what would he do? So initially he said like he would go to his parents or approach his teachers. But when we progressed, he acknowledged that he can have feelings. If he is feeling emotional and other people are not comfortable with him, then it's fine. What he can do, he can have feelings. And that was very important in that therapeutic journey. So I'll stop here. And we stopped therapy after a few sessions because of the lockdown. And I continued therapy telephonically with him. I have just ended therapy with him like last week. And he's feeling fine, though he still have difficulty like in managing, like he does not actually want to confront those difficult feelings still that I am aware of. So yeah, so I'll stop telling the story here because I'm aware of the time, and we will go to the last few slides and I'll share the results and the discussions around this therapy, the therapeutic journey that I had with my client, and the conclusions. Yes, thank you. So what I discovered was that movement stimulates endorphins and dopamine. Joy activates a sense of pleasure and involves the rewarding access of dopamine along with serotonin. So that was happening. You might remember that we played in the therapy space. We played board games, we make paper airplanes, we did some other gestures and action reactions, games we played. So that joy that was there, and he broke into laughters at times, and that contributed to the therapy. And Van der Kolk says, when we play together, we feel physically attuned and experience a sense of connection and joy, and that happened in this therapeutic journey. And he further says, the moment grim-faced people break out in a giggle, the spell of misery is broken, and that exactly happened. And when I finished therapy with my client, and I shared about Bollywood that we used to talk about, and I used to play some Bollywood music. When I shared that with him over the telephone in the last session, he laughed. So that's very important in therapy, I would say. When somebody is feeling depressed, somebody is feeling sad, and when you play, that changes because the physiology changes your feeling state in your brain. There are chemical changes, and that's how it works. Let's go to the next slide. Yes. So these are the conclusions that I reached to. So this investigation has highlighted the richness of drama therapy that offers numerous tools to facilitate the healing process of the clients in the state of not knowing. So as you remember, I started with I don't know. My client said I don't know, and I invited him to play a game with body movements, 1, 2, 3, and then we created characters. We went into the enactment, and there was a story, and that's how he knew what he was feeling. So it was a journey from not knowing to knowing and acknowledging. It is affirmed that clients, I don't know, does not really mean lack of knowledge, but an expression of difficult feelings of fear, shame, confusion, or something else. I don't know contains some degree of knowledge, and that was there. He was aware of his aggression. He was aware of what he was going on. So when he was saying, I don't know, that did not really mean he does not know anything. It has also highlighted how easily and safely a confused and overwhelmed client can express and process his feelings through stories, embodiment, and play. The importance of body that is central to drama therapy is also affirmed, and you can see that happening in the story. The last slide, please. Yes. Physical movements, including play, is helpful in bringing joy and pleasure, breaking the cycle of misery. Play is found very significant in the whole healing process. That's what I realized. The other phenomenon that was found significant was shared cultural background that I shared with you. Like, he belonged to Bangladesh, I belonged to India, and we shared a lot about our culture. It was found to play an important role in making connection. But my personal experiences outside that therapeutic relationship with my client, I'm talking about my relationship with my colleagues and other people outside. So my personal experiences outside are contrary to this therapeutic journey. So further research is recommended about the role of culture in the healing process. So I cannot say it with absolute confidence that culture has a role to play in making connections. It may or may not be true. There might be some different dynamics that are into play. It helped in making connection with my client in the therapy space, but that may not be the same in other spaces. So that's it. We conclude here. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments or any questions, you can start.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this wonderful sharing. So we have so many appreciations in the chat box. So, and we have a few questions. So I will ask a few questions. So Maulik Raj Shimali asked a question. What are the differences between sittings of psychologist and drama therapist?
Okay, so as I shared my journey with my client, it is clearly visible that we do not just sit and talk. In a session with a psychologist, the client would talk with the psychologist, and that is limited to their verbal communication. There is no space for any expression, any bodily expression. So that is the limitation of psychology as you said, sitting with psychologists. So the session with psychologists would be different. It would be limited to verbal communication. But in drama therapy, we use a lot of creative mediums to facilitate the process of healing.
Thank you so much, sir. There is a question from Vishnu Narayan. How much training is physiology involved in being a drama therapist? What are some exercises for establishing a safe space with whom working with a group?
Okay, so training in physiology, I'm really not sure what you mean by that. I am assuming that you are talking about the physical training. So let me share that it is a completely experiential training. So when we are in training, when we are in the classroom, we work with our body. We do not just sit and listen to the lectures. So there are body movements. We ourselves become the clients, and our tutors or our colleagues facilitate the therapeutic process. And in fact, to understand some concepts like attachment, when you're studying attachment theory, we had a seminar, and after that seminar, we worked in the space, experiencing it with the colleagues, and we could realize that in just 15 minutes time, there was some attachment that was formed, and we could feel that we are feeling attached to those people in that exercise. So that's how the training was. And what are some exercises for establishing a safe space when working with a group? Exercises can be many. We use like a lot of drama exercises. uh, which are not competitive but cooperative. So people feel uh, safe in a sense that they are equal and their feelings are respected and they are not mocked at and they are supported. So, yeah.
Thank you
And
so much,
can
sir. Yeah.
yeah, next
So
question.
that's another question. Just a minute. Yeah. Srishti uniting culture and society. Can you
Mhm.
please tell us a little more about the projection on objects, part of the process? Question mark. What kind of
Mhm.
objects and how to the enactment takes place? Question mark.
Questions and how the enactment takes place. All right. Okay. So these objects can be anything. Uh, we have a lot of objects and material in our therapy space, in our therapy room. So we work with small toys. We work with like anything can be object like this. This can be an object like, and a client can project his her feelings on this bottle of sanitizer, and its properties and qualities may or may not matter. What is important that the client can find some objects or some character on which he or she can project his or her feelings. Like in the story, when I invited my client to work with the objects, he used all human figures, and there was a muscular man with whom he could not make friends with initially. So he was projecting his feelings on that character, that these characters, like those are muscular, or that the image, that is the image that he had in his mind. So he was projecting his feelings on that object, that this is how they will treat me. So this is how it works. And
Uh,
what else was there? Enactment, how the enactment takes place. So in the enactment, uh, we invite the client to enact the story that he might have shared, or uh, he can choose some characters from some story, whichever that story can be. That is not important because any story a client would choose would reflect his or her inner feelings. Because the characters that one chooses, one can identify with those characters. There are some qualities that those characters have, and that's how it works. So we invite clients to choose some characters, and if there are more, they can give some characters to the therapist as well. And this is a different space. There is a talking space. We move from that space and we mark that this is a different space so that the client can feel the separation between the enactment space and the talking space, which is the space that we are usually in. And this is a different space where we can explore our feelings. And when we leave that space, we leave those characters there and come back to the usual space that we are in. So that's how it works. In more detail, if you want to know, you can read about it, and you will have to train to be a drama therapist to learn in detail. I hope it answers your question.
yeah.
Sir, can
Thank
I
you.
ask
Thank
you
you
one
so much,
question,
sir.
sir?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Please ask, but better if you can write in chat box. Please ask, sir, since you are in the line.
Yes, sir.
Please ask.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, a wonderful session. Thank you for that. Sir, I want you to suggest any method or any practice for us as a common listener. There are a lot of, laymen here, including myself. So,
Mhm.
see, especially you told that therapist teach their clients to love,
Mm-hmm.
to feel empathy.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned in one of the, I mean, at one point of time, you mentioned you teach how to love, how to feel empathy. So I
Mm-hmm.
want you to suggest some of these, any simplest methods to practice
Mm-hmm.
as a gift from you. I am asking.
Yeah, that's very simple. You to teach anyone to love, one must love to that person. When you want to teach that person to love someone else, you must love that person. When you love that person, when you give empathy, when you empathize with that person would feel loved, and that person would feel that empathy, and that will transform him, and that he can use with other people. He will start loving other people, and he would be able to empathize with other people. So that is the simplest way. We all want to be loved, and when we are not loved, you might have observed, when you are feeling frustrated because of something, you uh, you project that frustration or anger on other people. You uh, felt something or went through something in the office, and you come back home and you are not in a good mood. And that is there in the room, and that is transferred to your family members. And if you are happy, then that that is like your treatment would be completely different with the people. So that's how it works. It's very simple. It's just like you have to empathize with those people so they can empathize with others. They can feel love and empathize, and they can then transfer.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Yeah. Thank you, Prasad Brahma, sir. There is a question from Sharma Shankar. Some people mentally ready, at the same time, physically hesitate to expose themselves, autism,
Mhm.
age, and health condition. How to work core emotion therapy, this kind of people.
Mhm. So, when you say core emotion therapy, I don't know what you mean by that, uh, but uh, with any person who is not feeling ready to move, you do not need to force them. You need to create that environment in which they can feel motivated, enthusiastic, and safe enough to move. So let me share one of my sessions with the people with learning disability. That was a group, and it was a group of adults, and there were two autistic people, and one of them used to sit in the chair, and one of them used to move around in the room all the time. But there were moments when the one who was sitting in the chair could move and go and see things and take part in the session. And the other one, who used to move around and never sit at one place, she would sit in the chair and just listen to the story and see what is happening there. So it's all about the environment that you create, and the sensory stimuli that you create. At times, it can be too much stimulation for some people, and then they feel frightened and they can freeze. Uh, but if you create something and that is okay with them, then they can feel uh, safe to be a part of that. So you need to attune with that, with those people, and that is very important. Did I answer the whole question? Autism, yes. Age, yes. If you talk about age, then I had some elderly people in my group. They were like in the wheelchair. One of them could move, but with the help of others. Uh, and in one of the sessions, he felt charged and he left his chair and he went on to pick the stick, and he was standing there in the center of the group with the stick. He was so charged. So that is possible when such environment is created. That may not happen every time, but that is possible. So you need to keep experimenting and keep learning from your clients and from their needs. Keep understanding, keep empathizing with them, and keep attuning with them. And that will work, I hope.
Thank you so much, sir. And there is a question from Donna Zoran Tizolsa, and few people also ask the same. Currently, I'm pursuing my BA in psychology, and also I'm a drama artist. So I would be interested in pursuing drama therapy. What is your suggestion? Adding with that, so people asking, so what are the possibilities to learn this in India and how it works in India? So you can give some suggestion if you.
Mhm. So if you want to learn drama therapy, I'm really not sure whether there are any experiential courses in India. There are some movement courses, movement therapy, but not drama therapy per se. There is Wellbe Foundation that offers an online course, I think, but that's not experiential learning. And that's also very limited. Uh, and Here, let me share something about my training. It's a 2-year training, and it's a full-time course. Uh, and We do not learn in the classroom only. We work in the classroom, but we have placements alongside. So we work with the clients when we are on the course. And at the same time, we are in therapy. So we take individual therapy or group therapy to experience what it is like, and also to process our material, because it is it expects a lot of emotional involvement and investment from our side as training to be drama therapists. So I would suggest that do not go for shortcuts, go for a full-time course that is offered in the UK, in the US, and I think there is some course in Canada as well. I'm really not sure about that, but in the UK, yes, and in the US, yes, there are drama therapy courses. And my university is one of them. And the mother of ritual theater approach of drama therapy, Sue Jennings, established this course. And I heard that she was planning to migrate to India. I am not sure whether she is moved or she's still here in the UK because of this pandemic. I don't know. But if she still has plans to go back to India, then she might offer some short courses, or she might establish a department. You never know. But in India, I don't think that there is any full-time course.
Thanks so much, sir. And one last question, Ahalya Bala. how do you come back to being therapist from fellow player? What I mean is, how does the client know you are now, in bracket, after the play, yourself and not the character, question mark. Do you tell him that directly? So,
as I said, that when we work, when we do some enactment and embody some character, there is a clear demarcation in the space. And when we come out of that space, before coming to the talking chair, we do some shaking. We shake off those feelings and the characters, and then we come back. So we clearly know that we are in a different space and we are not in the character. So that's how it is. And in the talking chair, we reflect on those characters, being ourselves and not as characters. So we work with the characters in a different space. We come back to the chair. So there is a clear demarcation between the space. The boundary of space is there. And we also have threshold, demarcate that. So we cross the threshold before going in that space of enactment. And when we come back, we cross that threshold and we ask the client, what do you see on the threshold? And then they would share what they can see there on the threshold. So they are very much aware that they are crossing the threshold. They are coming out of those characters. So that's how it works.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Sir, actually, there are a few more questions, and people are really wanted to ask you regarding this, and because it's a non-established department mainly in India. So, if you can give your mail ID or some communication link, so it will be helpful for us to contact you. So, if possible, So, please give your mail ID, and so people are asking that.
So I'll take it in the chat box.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
So you can put it, so you'll get it. So participants, please forward your remaining questions to sir. So, and now and future, so you may get the detailed explanation through. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. We got it. praveenjain.drama@gmail.com. Friends, please note this down. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It's almost 1 hour and 15 minutes, more than that. And you spend your time and your knowledge and share with us. So it is a really wonderful session for us, and there's a new light towards drama therapy, so for most of us. So thank you so much.